Have you had an encounter with the King of the Forest that you'd like to hear narrated on this channel? Well, if so, send me an email with all the details. You can email me at contact@buckeyebigfoot.com. Hey there, everyone. I'm so glad you were able to stop in tonight, because let me tell you, tonight's story is a humdinger. I absolutely loved this when I read the email, and I think you'll love it too. So go on, grab your snackage, get on up there in the saddle, and let's get going. Those Sasquatches are waiting for us. Dear Buckeye Bigfoot, I want to tell you my story. I'm a 52-year-old woman, now divorced with 3 grown children who live in other states. I live on 145 in Clarksville, New Hampshire. Lake Francis is around 2 miles from my house, and the area is sparsely populated, has forests and vacation cabins and campgrounds in the area. My house sits about 150 feet off of the highway. You cannot see it from the road. I have a couple acres. The front is mostly cleared with just a strip of trees near the highway. That helps with privacy and noise control. The back of the house has about 1.5 acres that's clear. Beyond that, it's rough forest. I'm not sure how far the forest out there really goes. I looked on Google Maps and it looks like it goes clear to the lake and beyond. I relocated here from Missouri after a messy divorce. The first year here, I spent mostly inside the house trying to do projects and bring things up to, well, the 21st century. The second year, though, that's when I started getting outside a little more. Now, there were a few things over that first spring and early summer that happened, but I don't think they're really worth mentioning. They just made me scratch my head at the time. They may or may not have been anywhere connected to a Bigfoot. But then autumn rolled around, and I woke up to something slamming into the house. Now, this whole thing is pretty strange, and I don't even know if it's really connected, but somehow I think it is. The back part of the house was an addition that had been made, I believe, in the 1960s. It's clad in that old kind of metal aluminum siding. When anything hits that old metal, it makes a very loud sound. I woke right up, and I started looking out of all the windows along the back of the house. My first thought was maybe a moose had come up and was hitting its rack on the house or something. I know that seems weird, but I wasn't thinking of anything else. I had no idea what it could be. I was looking for something reasonable and logical. A moose in New Hampshire? Yeah, that's reasonable and logical. Now I looked and I hadn't seen any damage from anywhere of the windows. So I figured whatever it was, I'll just let it wander on before I go out to investigate. So I got up and I took my time and had some coffee before I got dressed to go outside. Turned out a big rock had been hurled at the back of the house. It hit way high up, near the eaves. It tore my siding up pretty good. It hit so hard that rock busted into a lot of smaller pieces. I put all the pieces together on the deck, and the shape of a rock was flat, jagged, and rather large. What the heck, I thought. Now, why would someone do that? I mean, they had to be pretty close to the house to throw a rock that size, right? They had to be pretty strong to throw a rock that size, that high up, that hard, I thought. Now, I had planned to replace that siding anyway. It just really wasn't in my budget to do it so soon. I took a walk around, and to my surprise, I saw large prints all over near the forest trees at the back of my property. I found the same kind of big prints in some of the landscape mulch. Now, when I put the mulch down earlier that year, I tamped it down real hard with the back of the shovel very tightly. Then I sprayed what they call mulch glue over it to keep it in place. After that, I could walk on that mulch and barely leave an indentation. But what I was seeing were prints that were sunk down very deep into the mulch, and the print was twice the size of my women's size 8 shoe. I do not hunt. I am no expert on footprints of any kind, human or animal, but I was sure these prints were not the usual suspects in the area, human or animal. I thought it was maybe some really big guy that had been creeping around. I didn't have any really big guys for neighbors that I knew of anyway, so I was pretty confused. Where had this gargantuan person come from? Now, it might have nothing to do with what happened later, of course, or with the Bigfoot at all. But there were times when I would be out in that yard, and I would suddenly feel like I was being stared at. I would get up and look all around, but there would be nobody there. And you know what? After a while, the forest out back that made me fall in love with that place to begin with, well, it began to take on a darker and more unwelcoming feeling. Not all the time, but enough that it made me worried. Eventually, I asked one of my neighbors if they had had anything weird happen or if they'd heard anything. She laughed it off and she said no, but then almost as an afterthought, she mentioned to me that maybe it would be a good idea if I got a dog. Seemed most of my neighbors did have a dog when I thought about it. I just said that I already had a security system, and she just shrugged and said okay. And yes, the house I bought did come with an old security system. It was probably 10 years old, and it did not include cameras. It did needed to be updated. Again, it was all about the budget. But I went home and I thought about what she said. A good dog is the best security system on the planet. You know, they can hear something outside. And while my security system goes off if someone opens a door or window, that dog will start barking its head off if a mouse squeaks. You know, and also a companion would be kind of nice, I thought. So I began looking for a dog. In the meantime, I went ahead and had part of the yard in the back fenced in preparation for the dog and, well, just a little added security for me. Now, I know that fences don't stop all animals, but in my experience, most animals tend to just walk around a fence unless you have a garden or something that they want to get to, and I didn't have a garden. But before the yard was fenced in, and before I took the step of finding a dog more seriously, I did have a very unsettling thing happen. It had been a very nice day, so I had all the windows open in the house. But as the day got later, I got busier and forgot about some things. I got absorbed doing laundry and making dinner. In the process, I had closed most of the windows, but I had forgotten to close the bathroom window on the back of the house. Now, this window is about 7 feet off the ground, the bottom of the window, that is, and it is not reachable from the back deck. After dinner, I was sitting in the living room watching television, and all of a sudden I heard a commotion. I heard things falling in the bathroom. I got up perplexed and wondering, maybe a shelf had come away from the wall or something. I go in, and all the stuff that was on the shelf unit above my toilet is in the floor, in the sink, and all over. And the shelf unit itself had been knocked over. Now, if there had been a curtain on the window, I would think that maybe a breeze caught the curtain and it caught on the shelf and pulled the whole thing over. But the window had frosted window panes and there was just a valance on the top. It was very short. It couldn't reach the shelving unit. But the thing was, the screen on that window had been pushed all the way in. I saw it. It was hanging on the inside. It had been pushed in from the outside. Then it seems something had grabbed the shelving or something on the shelf, and then everything fell. I immediately looked all around. That was a very small bathroom, and my first thought was that I should be looking for a raccoon or something that had forced its way in. But there was nothing there. And I don't know why, but suddenly, standing in the bright bathroom light, and it was all dark outside, I got nervous. I couldn't see what was out there, but if someone or something else was out there, I was on full display and all lit up. I suddenly had goosebumps everywhere, and a strange feeling came over me. I backed up, I shut out the light, and then slowly and quietly walked over to the window. Then I jumped to the ceiling when something right by the window moved and started running away from the house quickly. I was within reach of someone or something that was out there, and here I just walked right up to that window. Then it hit me. That window is more than 7 feet off the ground. Now, who could reach up and do that to the screen and then grab stuff off the wall? And why? It wasn't until a lot later that I noticed there was one thing missing in the big mess from the bathroom. You see, I had kept a small round makeup mirror that swiveled on a stand on one of those shelves. It was gone, I noticed, and there was no broken mirror glass. Did it get taken? I do think so. Maybe someone or something saw its reflection and took it, though I don't know why. Well, that was the last straw. I decided I did need a dog, because a dog that had been anywhere in that house would have let me know something was close to the house long before I had things falling off the wall. Now, up until then, my search for a dog, like I said, had been pretty leisurely, but it accelerated right then very quickly. The very next afternoon, I was looking on Craigslist, and there was a dog available in my area for free. First come, first get it. The pictures of the dog weren't clear, but I contacted the woman anyway. She said the dog was a mix of a Doberman and a Rottweiler, and that she wanted him gone immediately. He was fighting with her other dogs a lot. Now, her attitude told me she didn't care where the dog went or what happened to him after he was gone. She just wanted him gone. I was of two minds. One was that I needed an aggressive big dog. And then number two, I needed a dog that was big and aggressive, but also wouldn't eat me alive for no reason. But I took a chance. I got the address, grabbed my keys, and headed straight out the door. When I got there, well, let's just say, I could see this was not an ideal situation for any animal to live in. But I also think that the fate that would have been that dog's if I hadn't taken him that day would have been terrible beyond words. Let me explain. I was standing there, talking to her, undecided. She had the dog on a leash next to her. The dog was very large. He seemed very calm, but looking at his facial features and jaws, I saw more pit bull than Doberman, though he did look like a Rottweiler as well. I don't know. I felt something burning in the pit of my stomach every time I looked at that dog. He was so silent. It was like he was looking at me and begging me to save him. He never barked. He never made a sound. He just sat there and looked at me like the best boy ever. He didn't look at me in a scary, aggressive way either. You know, his whole body language was almost pleading and submissive, which also threw up a red flag. I needed an aggressive dog. But my decision was made in a fraction of a second when I heard another car coming down her drive. I can't explain what happened. I hadn't even seen who it was coming, but something made me say, "I'll take him." And I immediately started moving him to the kennel in the back of the car. I won't go into detail because all kinds of people will jump up and say that I'm judgmental and jump to conclusions. But I will say the two men in that car, when they got out, made my skin crawl. When they found out that dog wasn't available, they were asking if she had any other. I heard the conversation. You know, they didn't give two craps about the dog, really. They were just looking for a free dog. They were interested in how aggressive a dog was, and did they start fights with other dogs on their own. How much had he weighed, talking about the dog that I'm taking? They wanted to know, was he really aggressive? How much did he weigh? They wanted things like that. So you draw your own conclusions about what they wanted. Anyway, I drove away as fast as I could, my sweaty palms on the steering wheel, and checking the rearview mirror to make sure they weren't following me. Now, all the way home, that dog looked at me through the kennel in the back with eyes that seemed to say, "Thank you." Now, this woman told me that he had answered to things like slobber monster, a-hole, meathead, whatever I wanted to call him. I was not going to call him any of those things. So the first order of business was to rename him. I named him Atlas. Now, Atlas was not a Doberman Rottweiler mix. I don't care what that lady said. He was more of a Rottweiler Pit Bull mix. After we got to know each other a bit, he was actually a wonderful love bug of a dog. Well, with me anyway. Any other animal and a very different dog came out of him. I had to be very careful with him, though. Now, there were several times I let Atlas out into the fenced-in area, and he would go straight to the back of the fence. He would stare, growling low constantly. And there was no pulling him away from that fence either. He was pure muscle, and once he fixated on something, he was an immovable object. Now, one night, he was begging like crazy to go out. I let him out, and he took off across the yard. I had the back deck light on, but the far part of the fenced area was still in dark shadows. When Atlas hit the end of that fence, he was snarling and growling like I'd never heard him do. And he didn't stop. He sailed right over that fence. Now, he had never done that. I couldn't believe it. He'd gone off into the darkness after something, and from the sounds of it, he got a hold of it. I could hear the snarling and snapping. There were horrible fighting sounds. I heard other sounds, too, and shuffling in the grass out there beyond the fence. I heard awful, pained sounds, and not from Atlas. All I could think of was, oh, Lord, he's killing some stray dog out there. Maybe he got a hold of a deer. I didn't know what was happening. I ran back into the house and grabbed the spotlight from the laundry room. I lit that yard up. When I did, I could not believe my eyes. It looked like one of those dog training videos where someone's all dressed up in a bulky suit and a dog runs and clamps onto their arm, and no matter what the person does, the dog will not let go. You know what I'm talking about? That's what it looked like. Only the guy in the bulky suit, well, he was no guy, and it was huge and hairy. I had no idea what to do. First off, I knew there was no way I could possibly control Atlas. Like I said, when he got a hold of something, you would lose your arm if you tried to intervene. And I had never had a problem with Atlas. But we were still fairly new partners in life together, you know? I was screaming his name, but he never heard me. He had his teeth in something, and he was not letting go. I didn't know what to do. I didn't own a gun, and at that time I wouldn't have known how to use one if there was one there. I don't think I ever had a thought that clearly said, Bigfoot. That's a Bigfoot out there. The only thoughts I remember are like a stream of panic and wondering, what the heck can I do? The whole time I'm yelling and I am watching this thing swing Atlas around like a paper doll, shaking and dragging it. Atlas is clamped hard onto this thing's arm. I heard the Bigfoot screaming and yelling, too. I saw the Bigfoot hitting Atlas, trying to pull him off. Then he finally manages to pull Atlas off of him, and he throws him into the yard. He fell with a hard and forceful thud. I heard when Atlas hit the dirt. Without thinking, I ran out into the yard. Now, the Bigfoot was still out there, I'm sure, but I wasn't looking at it. I wasn't even thinking about that Bigfoot. All I could do was focus on Atlas. I ran out there, and Atlas's eyes were open, looking at me. And no, he wasn't dead. I know no one wants to hear about a dog dying. Trust me, I get it. The worst thing that happens when I watch a program is if the dog dies. You can kill all the people. I don't care. That's fine. Just not the dog. I'm with you people on that one. But don't worry. Atlas was alive. He was just in bad shape and very stunned from the impact. I get to Atlas and I slide to a kneel by him in the dirt. I'm talking to him, and then I hear a terrible scream. I hear some pounding on the ground. I look up, and that Bigfoot has now come over the fence. I could see its arms were all bloody. They were mangled up. It looked like he had some bites on his chest, too. And the look on that thing's face was very mad, and it was clearly in pain. That's when I came to my senses and realized that me and Atlas were in some terrible danger. That Bigfoot wanted to make sure Atlas was dead, and probably me too. I think I was babbling and trying to talk to the Bigfoot. I really don't remember. I have no clear memory of this. I do remember the anger on its face was very real. It was breathing hard and making strange sounds. I just kept talking and babbling as I scooped up Atlas. You know, I guess adrenaline really can be a friend in those situations, because Atlas weighed about 105 pounds at his last vet visit right before this. I weighed 127 pounds, and yet I picked Atlas up like he was a tiny little puppy. I do remember hoping that I wasn't hurting him or making it worse by picking him up, but I picked him up anyway. Atlas yelped and cried horribly, and it broke my heart, but incredibly, he did not snap at me. I got Atlas, and I walked backwards just a few steps. Then I turned and ran up the steps and got into the house. I could hear the screams of the Bigfoot the whole way. I laid Atlas down in the living room floor. Then I went around and turned on every light outside the house that I could. I took a look out back quickly, and the Bigfoot was gone. I think the only reason that Bigfoot did not pursue further was because it was badly hurt. I went back to Atlas. I quickly checked all over on the internet for an open veterinary or animal hospital, but there was nothing for several hours away. I sat there on the floor with Atlas as he struggled through the night. I cried. I prayed. I cursed the Bigfoot. I really honestly didn't think Atlas would make it till morning, but there was nothing I could do. But at 8 a.m. sharp, I was in Colebrook at the vet. When they asked me what happened, I lied and said I wasn't quite sure. Atlas had gotten out of the fence, and I found him like that near the road. I think he had been hit. Atlas suffered broken ribs and quite a bit of other damage, but the important thing was no internal bleeding or ruptures. I'm not going to go into all the veterinary details. It's enough to say that Atlas made it through, and he's still with me today. The vet and the techs all said they were so surprised at how calm and non-aggressive Atlas was, even though he was in terrible pain at times. The thing that saved him, the vet said, is that he was young, strong, and a healthy dog. If he'd been older or a lot younger, or a less healthy stray dog, he probably would not have had the strength to survive. But he did. Atlas survived, and he's still with me. Now that was 3 years ago. Since then, I have not seen another one of those things. And I will call them things. They are not human in my book. I don't care what anyone thinks or says. I've fantasized about getting revenge on that Bigfoot. I fantasize about killing it slowly, maybe putting poison in some food out there for it. Maybe he's setting up some dangerous booby traps to kill it if it comes anywhere near my house again. Of course, I've done none of those things, and I would never do those things. I'm not that kind of person. But late at night, it sure feels nice to fantasize about it. Now, nothing has changed, really, for Atlas. About a week after he came home from the vet, the first day that he was well enough to go down the steps in the back, well, he did so. I really didn't think that he would go down the steps when he wanted to go out to the deck. I thought he just wanted to lay in the sun on the deck while I drank my coffee. He had done that the day before. I watched, surprised, as he walked slowly, taking one step at a time. When he came home from the vet said he probably wouldn't walk much at all. Well, to our surprise, Atlas and his strength helped him walk whenever he wanted. So Atlas walked down the steps and out to the yard very gingerly. Then he stopped halfway with his nose in the air. Quietly, he woofed twice. Then he walked over to right where the Bigfoot had stood, just inside the fence. Atlas tried to growl and bark, but then he would wince and yelp. I think the pain made him stop. I had followed Atlas out there, walking just a few steps behind him in case he needed me. He sniffed the air again, made a few more small, quiet woofs. Then he looked back at me as if to ask, "Well, where is it? It was here, wasn't it? It was right here, wasn't it? But it's gone now, right, Mom?" He sniffed all around in the grass right there for several minutes. He didn't really want to leave, but I could see he was getting very tired, and it was getting close to his next round of pills. Atlas turned to go back to the house, but he kept stopping and looking back, like he thought it was going to come over the fence at him. Maybe it was out there in the forest watching. Finally, Atlas stood at the bottom of the steps, either too tired or in too much pain to go up the steps himself. He looked at me helplessly. I ran in and got the canvas body sling that the vet gave me, and I helped Atlas get up the steps as best I could, with as minimal pain as possible. It was almost 3 more weeks before Atlas ventured back down those steps. I think he only forced himself that day just to be sure that that threat was not there while he was inside, vulnerable and recovering. In the spring, I had that fence removed and instead had a 6-foot privacy fence put up. Now, until that went in, and when Atlas was healed, I let him out, hooked to a lead that was connected to a thick metal wire, and of course I never let him out alone. Now, on that wire lead, he could reach most of the yard, but what he couldn't do was jump over the fence. 'Cause, I don't kid myself, though. I know if Atlas wanted to, I believe he could get over that 6-foot privacy fence. But it's a bit of a deterrent for him at the very least. I also don't kid myself that a mere privacy fence would keep something like a Bigfoot out. But it still helps me feel a bit better when we sit out in the evenings. While I have not seen another Bigfoot since that night, I have had proof many times that they are still around. There have been times that Atlas will go wild at night, trying to dig his way through the back door to get outside. I never let him out after dark, though. Never anymore. Instead, I have fake puppy training turf in the spare bedroom where he can go and do his business anytime he wants after dark. I would rather clean that up all the time than ever let him out after dark again. Atlas destroyed the old back door so badly, I had to have it replaced with a new steel door. That old wood door just wasn't going to make it much longer. The point that I want to make with this is that Atlas doesn't act like that when there are deer or moose in the yard. He doesn't go that berserk even when there's a stray dog out there. There's only one night I have ever seen him be so mindless and focused on getting outside, and that's the night that he fought the Bigfoot. Now, I just read over all of this, and I keep putting things in because I remember more things all the time. A few things about that Bigfoot that I forgot to say was I think it was about 6.5 feet tall, and it was definitely a female as well. The fur was a dark brown and looked a lot of red in the spotlight. Its arms were massive, both in girth and length. I remember looking at the face and the bloody arms and the bites on the chest, but I don't remember much else about the rest of it. For a while, I did consider moving, but where is really safe anyway? But since Atlas attacked that Bigfoot, none have ever come close to the house. Well, not that I know of anyway. Deer don't come across my property much anymore either, even if Atlas is inside. I know that the scent of a dog will keep a lot of animals away. I know Bigfoot isn't supposed to like dogs, so maybe it's keeping him or her away. I also have a gun now, and I would never hesitate to use it, especially if Atlas was in danger. You know, I think about it, and I think that me and Atlas both kind of saved each other from some pretty bad things. I wouldn't trade him for the world. I don't know how many dogs attack a Bigfoot, but I have read that the ones that do don't usually survive. But Atlas survived. Atlas is strong. I didn't know it, but I named him very well. Thank you. Signed, Vicky. All right, everyone. Well, I promised a humdinger. To me, that was a humdinger of an email. I am very fond of animals. You all know that. And when I started her email, my first thought was, oh my gosh, no, I can't read another one about a dog getting killed by Bigfoot. The worst was the one about Victor. I think that was the very first year. It was in July of 2019, I think. It was a terrible where the dog actually was killed by a Bigfoot. He was a former military service dog. Anyway, that one broke my heart, and I had a hard time with that story. Thankfully, Vicky's story turned out good, and I am so glad that she took Atlas that day. I don't want to think about what the fate might have been otherwise. Unfortunately, it's all too common when people post pets for free. Anyway, everyone, I think that's almost everything. I'm just going to remind you real quick, and for the last time, next weekend, I will be in Greenville, Ohio. I don't even know if I'll be able to get a video up on Friday. I'll try to get one done early, but the Spirit of the Forest Bigfoot Festival in Greenville, Ohio is running on Friday and Saturday. I will be there both days. So if you haven't already, if you see an activity or a speaker that interests you, go ahead and get your tickets. I'll put the link to the festival in the comments below. All right, everyone, listen, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. It looks to be beautiful here in Southwest Ohio. I'm definitely going to take advantage of it. I hope wherever you are, even if you have to work, I hope you can find a few minutes, and I hope you can enjoy your journeys further into Sasquatch Valley. Until we meet up again, everyone, I wish you all a good evening, and please always remember, absence of proof is not proof of absence. Thanks for listening.